Welcome to the Madness Creation Podcast, where self-care and music merge. This is Maddie. How are you? I hope you enjoy the following episodes coming up. Adrian Gurvitz, Fran of Light the Torch, Lawrence Gowan of the legendary band Styx, V of Violent Idols, and Never Loved. At this show, we focus on mental health awareness with ending the stigma on mental health. Our goal and focus of this podcast is to touch people's hearts and to save lives. Studies have shown that 1 in 5 U.S. adults have experienced mental illness and 1 in 20 have experienced serious mental illness. We believe that the state of your mental health affects how you think, feel, and ultimately act. The more we talk about it, the more we can encourage people to address their mental health. If we help save one life through this, then it's worth it. We hope one day that people take it as seriously as we do when we have a physical ailment. Sometimes the topics we bring up are sensitive and might trigger the listener. This is why we have included timestamps in the episode description in case there is a part of the podcast you don't want to listen to. Or, of course, if there is only one part of the podcast you want to choose to listen to. No matter what, we love you for checking it out, and please give us feedback. We are working on setting up a Patreon, and we will have an announcement of said Patreon July 1st on Instagram TV. It would mean so much if you would support it. We are hoping to begin to have sponsors August 1st. Email us at madnesscreation@gmail.com with the subject line sponsorship if you are interested. We are also releasing a schedule July 1st to where you can find us easily. You can find us on Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Geo7, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Podchaser, and Podcast Addict. And for algorithm purposes, we would love you forever if you would choose to follow us on one of those platforms. It would help the algorithms. On that note, be safe, be well, and be balanced. Take it away, peoples. Welcome to the Madness Creation Podcast, where self-care and music merge. This is Maddie. How are you? I have with me Adrian Gurvitz, who is just an executive producer and jack of all trades, everything like that. So, Adrian, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And basically, we brought you on to discuss launching Golden Globe Award winner for Best Actress, Andra Day. So tell me how that came about and stuff.
Well, I produce artists, have done now for many, many years. One of the things I do is I look for talent, search for talent. And, you know, if I find a great singer that I think is worthy of being a star, I work with them in the studio. And I try to bring them up above the fray and try to pick their direction, maybe change their name, make the right singles, do the right album. And that's how it came around. I mean, Andra her name was Cassandra Beatty when I found her, and she was completely unknown. And I spent a year producing Cheers to the Fall, which was her debut album. And then I produced Rise Up, which became one of the biggest songs of the decade. And of course now she's flying and become an actress and, like you say, a global winner, Golden Globe winner. And very, very happy, that that I still got the eye and the ear for, building an artist, which is really what I love to do. I've had 50 odd years of hit records and making albums. And I've done so much, like you say, even though my name's not Jack, it's Adrian of all trades. That's really what I do. And I love it. I love, because once I concentrated on my own career, and I had, hit records and hit albums under Adrian Gurvitz. But, in the latter years, I really loved producing, and I love, not having to leave my home. I have a fabulous studio, and we work here and we make records. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So, so my question is, did Andra Day call you or anything like that when she won her Golden Globe or anything like that, or?
Yeah, of course. She sent out messages and thanked me, like she would, and she did. And also she, last week she was on Jimmy Kimmel and she thanked me on Jimmy Kimmel and said, Adrian was my producer on the first album. And there are many accolades out there that she's said that none of it would happen if it wasn't for me.
Absolutely. And you have worked with the who's who of talent. Like, you're part of the Bodyguard soundtrack. You've worked with like Eddie Money, Steve Perry, CeCe Winans, and all that. And what are some things that you have learned about yourself over the years when you have produced all of this talent? And I couldn't help but notice in the background, the Bodyguard is such a legendary soundtrack, especially over here in the States, with over 16 million records sold. What are some like takeaways that you have, or some of your favorite memories that you have working with Eddie Money, Steve Perry, and being a part of the Bodyguard soundtrack and all that?
Well, it's always been, really interesting to work with various different artists. A lot of luck involved. I can't imagine how many people try to write songs for the Bodyguard. There were probably, 10,000 submissions.
Oh, so, no kidding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Many, many, many. Everybody wanted to be on that record. But I was lucky. I met David Foster, and he was kind of a cool guy and very friendly with me. And he phoned me and said, you're on the album. Eddie Money, funny enough, I flew in from England. And I was actually in Palm Springs, and I decided to write a song. I was looking up at the stars, and I wrote this song. And we demoed it, and we sent it to Eddie Money, and he loved it. I think Richie Zito produced that, and I got a call in London saying they wanted to do it, and it went number one rock.
Wow.
CeCe Winans came here to my house in California, and I worked with her. It's a funny story, actually, because when I was writing with her, she said, how do you remember? How do you remember anything? I said, well, I just never forget. I never forget. When I'm at the piano, I just always remember the melody or the lyric or what I'm doing. She said, that sounds great. She says, but I need a tape recorder. So she actually sent a right-hand man out to get a tape recorder and put the tape recorder on the piano. And I thought that was funny. So I ended up doing about 3 or 4 records with her and a Dove Award. And she's most phenomenal singer, absolutely phenomenal. I've been so lucky to work with incredible singers. Steve Perry is an amazing singer. Mm-hmm. CeCe Winans, so many great singers. I also worked with Youssou N'Dour, who's South African. He's the biggest, star in South Africa, and he's also the most ridiculous singer. I don't know what I learned. I mean, I just learned mostly to keep my mouth shut, other than to come up with something that's, like what I think is really, really cool. Mm-hmm. Mostly, I've always only ever written straight. It's going to sound strange, but straight out of my heart. Mm-hmm. I don't really pontificate or sit there and craft for like days and weeks, chipping away at what a song is. Mm-hmm. I wake up, and if it comes out of my heart and I'm feeling it, that's what I've learned. That
absolutely,
it's just spontaneous. It's like that's what I love to do. I don't know what I've learned. The music industry is very tough.
Would you say it's tougher now? The music industry is tougher now, or is it more tough back then?
I don't think it was as tough back then because, we had 50 years of golden era of music. Mm-hmm. The greatest artists, the greatest rock, the greatest soul, the 60s, the 70s. The music was phenomenal. And we made those albums in a proper studio. And, with a record label and producers, and I just think it's been watered down so much now that, and saturated, because, you know, not everybody used to get signed to record labels. You got signed to a record label if you was a great artist. Mm-hmm. But now everyone thinks they're a great artist, and everyone thinks they can put records out on Spotify and YouTube and think they're a star. Maybe there are some, but when you think there's 40 or 50,000 records put out every month, mm-hmm. it's just not possible. You're not going to find David Bowie's and Bob Marley's and, you know, the Queen and Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin, and you're not Paul Simon and the Beach Boys. You're not going to find that caliber of act anymore. So mm-hmm. I think it's a lot harder now to identify out of all those people, you know, that are trying. Good luck to them to try. I would never say to anyone, don't, you know, if you really believe in yourself, you should really keep trying. And if you try hard enough, you might just get there. But I'm just saying that musically, I think we degraded music. And I don't think I'm like coming from that from an old man's point of view. Mm-hmm. Great music is great music. I mean, you can listen to Neil Young to the day you die. Mm-hmm. But I doubt some people we even want to listen to. You know what I'm saying? It's like, absolutely. We had phenomenal era of music, decades and decades of the greatest music. The 80s were phenomenal. Nirvana and all the rock that we had, great rock. And now rock seems to be like just diminishing. And all radio stations play is the old rock, you know, and older music, other than what the kids do when they go streaming, you know, off of the music from laptops and stuff like that. But in my opinion, it wasn't as great.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is causing like rock music today to be diminishing? Is it the fact that the mystique is gone, or is it like the change in culture? Like, you know, well, is it more political correctness? What do you think?
Well, I think, again, it's the same thing I just said. When you had AC/DC and when you had these most phenomenal rock bands, Eddie Van Halen, you know, once you've had that, what are you going to, if you can't follow it with something better, what do you do? I mean, you know, Led Zeppelin wrote the book and closed it. You know, it's, no one's coming up with Led Zeppelin. No one's coming up with Eddie Van Halen. No one's coming up with AC/DC, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. And when you go to a concert and see AC/DC with 50, 60,000 people going crazy.
Oh, absolutely. And they still bring it.
What are you going to bring out?
Yeah.
That's going to take away from Angus or Eddie or any of those people. It's just, right now, it just don't seem possible. It is possible. And I'm praying one day that rock and roll gets back into America, because rock and roll was born in America. Mm-hmm. And that is really what America's about, or was about. You know, rock and roll was like, we learned everything from that rock and roll. Like Starship said, we built this city on rock and roll, and we did.
Absolutely.
But rock and roll now is depleted. It's, where is it? You know, and why is it not there anymore? And it's very disturbing, because rock music is my favorite. Mm-hmm. Nothing better than to sit in front of AC/DC.
What are a few of your favorite songs by AC/DC, or favorite albums?
Honestly, all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, I sit and watch them on YouTube. I took my son to see AC/DC in Vegas a few years ago, and it was ridiculous.
Absolutely. Yeah, and people can just go back to the Back in Black album. It just brings back so much memories and all that and stuff. And that's one thing I think people really appreciate about AC/DC. So, like, what is like I'm working on a book called Lighthouse's Darkest Distance, how we get through the difficult times in life. What are what's like the soundtrack to your life? Naturally, you're a producer and all that, but do you have like, besides AC/DC, do you have any like bands or artists that you go to when times are difficult that make you feel better or anything like that?
I always go back to the Beatles.
Oh, the Beatles.
Yeah. I mean, the Beatles are the soundtrack to my life, without a doubt. You know, I can hear any song with them come on and cry, or Paul McCartney and to start like crying, you know. And Neil Young too. I remember being in Spain when Neil Young's Harvest album came out. And I was, I don't know, I think I was 18 or 19, maybe, yeah. And there I was in Spain and, you know, listening to that album. And now when I drive with one of my sons in the car, an old man, Look at My Life comes on, you know, I have tears rolling down my eyes. There are certain songs and certain times over the 50 years that just hit you so hard. You know, the memory of what life was. And, you know, so I don't know, the Beatles for me was definitely the soundtrack of my life. You know, kissing my first girlfriend to, you know, to I Want to Hold Your Hand or something, you know, like.
Oh, that's such a timeless song.
They were like, to me, they were like another planet. You know, if you could add another planet in the sky, you could call it the Beatles. And it was just crazy. You know, it's the more than the band, the more than it's like your whole life. When you hear those songs, your whole life flashes before you.
Absolutely. And let's say Paul McCartney comes up to you and says, I want to write a song with you. Just kind of a fun question. I just literally just thought of this. What would the name of the song be? And what would like some of the lyrics be about, do you think?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. You know, we were in London a few years ago and I was walking down the road with my son because I was working in Abbey Road, producing a record in Abbey Road.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So we were walking down the road and my son had his headphones on and he was playing Get Back on his headphones. We walked into a restaurant and Paul McCartney was right in front of him. He nearly fainted. My son Ben, he nearly fainted.
So what was Paul McCartney doing there?
He lived in St. John's Wood. He was living in St. John's Wood.
Oh, okay.
Right near where the studio was.
Okay.
But to answer the question, first of all, I'd faint.
I probably would too.
If you called me up and said, hey, Adrian, you want to do the record? You hear a big bang, I'd go on the floor and faint. And then when I woke up, I would then say, well, Paul, yeah, I mean, you know, there's nothing in life I'd rather do than see out the last parts of my life knowing that I did a song with you. But I don't really know how to answer what I would write about because it would be about the feeling that I had when I was with him, you know, and what he was feeling and I was feeling, and collectively together we'd probably do a really great song, actually. But I don't think he's looking for me.
Well, you never know. Maybe someday, you know. Yeah.
But it was great bumping into him. Really cool. My first road manager in the Gun, which was my first hit single when I was 18, I actually got him a job with Paul McCartney in the 70s. And he's been with Paul McCartney ever since. He's been his right-hand man ever since. So he often, when he comes into Los Angeles, he calls me from the jet. He says, I'm coming in with Paul, you want to meet? And go to dinner, and then I meet him. And so I know. It's the only way I know that I've touched him. Getting the road manager.
Yeah, like I have like so many questions, but like looking back, like when you hear like whether it's the songs from like CeCe Winans on the radio or like the Bodyguard soundtrack or anything like that, like how humbling is it to just like know that these songs played an impact on so many people and that you played a role in that?
Well, yeah, I mean, how can I put this? I'm not very much like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Adrian's just an ordinary bloke. You know, my father left home when I was 8. My mother was dying of cancer when I was 12. I was on the street. I was on the street at 13, 14 years playing my guitar. Never really went to school. And I've just like hustled my way with my guitar and just found a way through. I'm not really spiritual. Not, I mean, I believe in God, or I believe in God, but I'm not. I'm not one of those people who say, "Oh, I helped everybody," and I know that it did because I know a lot of these songs did inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the songs inspire people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's great. But I don't really put it like forward, It's not like, oh yeah, I inspired the world with Rise Up, or I inspired the world with this, and I just did what my job was. And my job in life, obviously, was to write songs and play guitar. And that's the job I picked up when I was 8 years old. And I'll be 72 in June. And I've done nothing in my life other than write songs and make records. And if people love them and it's inspired people, great. But, I don't kind of walk around with a halo on my head. I inspired this or I inspired that. I just did what I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Like, let's say I go to your writer's workshop and I am clueless on how to write a song. What's the first thing that you're going to teach me?
Well, can you sing?
I don't know. I mean, I do a little bit of karaoke, but you wouldn't want me to record an album or anything like that.
Well, what is a song? Mostly, if we look at a standard song, it has a verse, and it has some sort of a pre, and then it has a chorus, and then it repeats it, 2 or 3 times, and then just says goodbye after 3 minutes. And in that song, depending on what type of artist you are, if you was a crazy rock artist, you might only need about 4 words. Rock me tonight, rock, rock, let's rock, rock, whatever.
Right.
You'd write a song like that. And then if you wanted to be like prolific, you might write, from the dedicated Mr. Carrot, Saturday, you might come up with a really good melody. Or if you're a soul artist, you're going to come up with, baby, baby, this is the night I want to do you, baby. And, whatever you're thinking in each genre, you're going to come up with that kind of melody. And the idea is that it's got to be pretty valid. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to hear a bunch of beep, 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 beep. So, very difficult to say. I mean, I think you have to have some artistry to even consider thinking about writing a song. You've got plenty of examples. Mm-hmm. There's millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of songs that you could have. You could, listen to and say, well, I see how they structured that, and I see what they did there. And maybe Tom Petty sat for 6 months carving out, Last Dance with Mary Jane. It's infinite of what you could do, but it comes down to the person who, that's what songwriters do. I mean, they sit and they write. Some people are just really great songsmith writers, that they know about words, and they know how to string the words together to make them sound great. And then after the lyrics, then there's the melody. The melody could be so many different things. Imagine could have been imagine there's no heaven. But it wasn't, imagine there's no heaven, you know. Or it could be, imagine there's no heaven, imagine, 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 imagine. You know, the melodies are infinite. So, you know, when you're trying to write a song, who knows what the right fucking melody is? Oh, that's four.
It's okay. Have at
who knows what the melody is? The melody, when you hit a melody that you really love, I think that's the most important thing. Because if it talks to you and you go, oh, I love that, then stick with that. You know, it's like, that's the melody I love. I love that melody. Someone else might come in the room and go, you know what, that melody sucks. And you go, well, this is my deal, it's my instinct, I'm keeping it. Or you might wake up the next day like I do. And you go, I'm not sure about that melody. I think I want to change it.
So do you like consider yourself, like, when it comes to your producing, songwriting, and so on and so forth, do you consider yourself like your own worst critic or anything like that, or do you consider yourself to be a perfectionist? Or
I think I'm a perfectionist, but I always bring my wife in to play her the record. And even though I tell her to get lost, she tells me that it sucks. I take a lot of notice of her. For some reason, I don't know why. A lot of the time she's right. And I would change the record. And then she'll come back in the next day and went, so you did change that, you know, so I don't know. Yeah.
So how much is how much does your wife mean to you, and like what does she do for work? Like, does she help you out like on the business end of the aspect, or what does she do?
She's a full-blown mom. We've had 4 children, a bunch of dogs, but the biggest child for her to look after is me.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, because, you know, Adrian doesn't pick up his clothes, or I don't do laundry, I don't do anything other than make records. And I'm a good cook, so I do make a lot of the food. In fact, I make nearly all the food. She's a terrible cook. But she's a good mum, you know, and we've been together 30 years.
Oh, congratulations.
30 years, a couple of months ago. And, you know, even though I was a crazy rock and roll lunatic guitar player, traveling the world, I managed to stay married for 30 years, 1 wife, and 4 kids.
Wow. So what kept you disciplined, so to speak, like traveling the world? Because there had to be like a lot of temptations and all that stuff, you know?
Well, there were huge temptations. I mean, first of all, I was with Ginger Baker, who was a heroin addict.
Oh, wow.
And then, you know, he was in Cream, right?
Absolutely.
And then I was with Buddy Miles, who was with Jimi Hendrix. And he took more drugs than pharmacy.
That's a lot of drugs.
a lot of drugs. And so I've been with masses of people in the industry that like drugs. But I was very fortunate. I grew up with my mother and my grandma. We come from a Jewish background, and I adored my mum and I adored my grandma. And I would never really do anything to have something bad come back to them, you know. So I didn't drink, and I didn't do drugs, and I went through the whole music industry, staying like just normal, and saying no to it, which you can do. You know, you don't have to be out of your mind on on drugs or hallucinants, I don't think, to make great music. And I'm living proof of it, because you can't see around this room, but there's hundreds of records in here that I didn't have to take drugs or get drunk. And even now I do enjoy one beer, maybe every other night. I never drink two. Never drink two. I'll just move this for a second. So
sure.
I don't know if you can see, but there's
wow.
There's all these records, and then I got a whole bunch of other records. But that's what that's the way. I had this saying that I used to love looking in the snake pit, but I never liked jumping in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a little dangerous in there, can it?
It was like, I used to see Ginger like out of it every day on heroin.
Oh, how tough was that for you?
It used to be tough because I made like 3 or 4 albums with him. So I was with Ginger for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tough. It's always tough when you see, someone who's the greatest drummer in the world.
Oh, he's a legendary drummer.
Greatest rock drummer in the world. And to see him kill himself every day on heroin wasn't the best fun. But again, I used to see past it because, that little boy who grew up playing guitar, and I used to go watch Cream when I was about 15 or 16, and then to one day be looking around and being on stage with Ginger and making albums with him. It was like, pinch me. It's like, I can
imagine that.
It was crazy. And all the things that led to that were crazy. I was just a little nobody, living in a little nobody street with a little nobody guitar. And I found my way. My father, when he left home when I was young, actually 8, he got a job with Cliff Richards and the Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like their tour manager. And he used to travel everywhere and do all the films with Cliff, because Cliff was a big star in England.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff Richards. My father would get me every other weekend, and I'd see them on stage and see Cliff making, Summer Holiday in, the film studio or something. So I had a vision very, very early that my dad showed me, even though he wasn't there for me, but he did show me this vision. And then he went to work for the Kinks. So in the mid-60s, he worked with the Kinks. He went to America with the Kinks.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, in the West End, as a young boy, 16 in the West End, and running around trying to become successful, I had a little bit of a help, like, oh yeah, well, that's my dad. And can I borrow this guitar?
Mm-hmm.
I used to run into shops and say, I have a gig tonight, I haven't got an amp, can I borrow an amp? They'd lend me an amp. So he gave me the vision. And very strange. I didn't come from rich parents at all.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anything. All my friends had rich parents, and I had nothing. I couldn't have a car or anything like that. But when I got to 17 and I had my first hit, which was Race for the Devil by The Gun,
Mm-hmm.
I bought myself an E-Type Jaguar.
Oh, nice.
And I drove it up to the local Hamburger Bar, where all the rich boys were. Kind of shouted out of the window and said, yeah, this is what you get when you work hard for it yourself. So I don't know. I never thought, I never dreamed I was going to do this, have this life. But I used to tell people that I was going to. It was my way of saying, I'm going to fucking make it no matter what. And I was a podgy, overweight, overfed little Jewish boy that really had no chance of being a rock star at all, none. But I used to tell everybody I was going to be, and I was.
So at that Hamburger Bar, or Hamburger Diner, was that the moment when you realized, hey, I'm going to do this for a living? Or do you have another particular moment where you're like, hey, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life?
Well, you can never know you're going to do it for the rest of your life. I mean, I might have been a complete failure. Never got with Ginger, never got with Buddy Miles, never got with the Moody Blues, never had hits, never, it could have ended. It just didn't. Like I said, it's just what I did every day. It's like I did it every day, and that's kind of what I did. I just kept making records. I made 17 albums of my own. And then I became a producer and a songwriter, and then a record company owner, and then now developing acts. So it's just a life spent, it's the life spent. It's what I spent my life doing. I didn't know. I don't think anybody knows. I mean, you could have fucking died after 4 years, or died in a plane crash, or...
You're right.
Nobody knows. You never know what's around the corner.
Exactly.
You just keep fucking going. You just keep going, and that's all you can do. And the minute you don't get up and keep going, but then you're fucked. So outside the Wimpy Bar, yeah, I'm going to be a rock star. And I stuck to it, and I didn't change. I didn't change. I just kept going. And it's been up and down.
I'm sure it has its ups and downs.
Some crazy ups and some crazy downs. And what goes on in between that 55 years is going to have to take writing down in a book.
Oh, speaking of writing down in a book, do you plan on releasing a book at all on this, or like releasing some type of I don't want to say biopic or anything like that, or documentary, or?
No, I'd like to write a book, which is kind of funny for someone who can't spell and didn't go to school. But sometimes I say to myself, okay, I'm going to get up this morning, I'm going to start my book in the garden and go write my book. And then I think, who the fuck wants to really know? I mean, so what? So you had a life and you lived it. Everybody has a life that they live. But do we all want to read about everybody's lives? And for some people, I guess it's really important to document your life.
Mm-hmm.
But only if it has, incredible meaning. I think the only meaning it would have for me is that I leave it behind, for my kids to read, or maybe some people who are interested in Adrian Gurvitz's life, or, like what I did. I'd like to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I think...
Is there a petition going for that?
I think I'm worthy of it because I've done so much.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just have a rock album or this or that, but I've made hit records for everybody.
Absolutely.
I'm still doing it over 50 odd years, and my credits are just absolutely huge. So maybe I should have a special little thing for not Elvis Presley's or Eddie Van Halen's, but hey, this guy did 50 years of music, and
some type of lifetime achievement award or something,
Yeah, something would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll definitely get a petition going to try to get you in the Hall of Fame. I think that would be so incredible. So, with all the records that you have produced and everything, can you give me a top 5 list of favorite records you produce? And I'm sure you don't like playing favorites or anything like that, but top 5 that stick out in your mind.
Well, obviously the first one, which was Race with the Devil, which really did start my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never even written a song. In fact, I remember going to my mother and saying, I got to go into the studio to record a song, but I haven't got a song. She said, well, son, you'll come up with it. and I wrote the most stupid lyric ever. Better run. The race is on. You better run from the devil's gun. And then we didn't have anything after that, so I just did that guitar riff, you know. And the bloody thing went straight to the top. It was a massive hit, my first single ever. You couldn't walk down the street without hearing it. It was brilliant, you know. It was, and the sound of that record, it still sounds. If you listen to it, it still sounds current today. So that's one of my favorites. Obviously, in the 80s, I wrote a song for my mom called Classic.
Okay.
And that has become one of the most famous ballads in the UK and all over the world. And again, that had the most stupid lyric. Gonna write a classic, gonna write it in an attic. I'm an addict now, addict for your love. Couldn't get more illiterate than that, but it was a massive hit. Been covered about 500 times, and so that was one of my favorites. Obviously, Rise Up by Andra Day.
Mm-hmm. I
was asked to, produce that, and I think that is a classic. It is a classic. It was a fantastic record. I didn't produce the Eddie Money song, but I wrote it. But I did produce the You So Endure, My Hope Is In You, and I love that record. You So Endure. I don't know. I mean, look, there's so many records.
Yeah.
So many records. It's a whole lifetime of records.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible what you have accomplished. So, like, through COVID and everything, have you done any like live streams of your performances or anything like that, or do you plan on touring or anything like that, or?
No, I really gave up touring in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I gave up touring in the 80s.
What caused you to give that up?
It's kind of sad, really. I grew up with my mom, like I said, and she had cancer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She lived till I was 38, but she was always getting cancer, and it was always coming back. And in the 80s, when she finally died, I think for a while there, I was, a bird that didn't want to sing.
Mm-hmm.
I was a caged bird that didn't want to sing anymore. I still could sing, and I loved singing, but it wasn't something I wanted to go out and do. I wanted to kind of hide away in a new world. I moved to California, made a family, and concentrated on making a new family after losing the one I grew up with. And it wasn't really a priority anymore.
Mm-hmm.
To go perform, Sometimes I have a fight with my wife and I go, I'm going back to England and I'm going to do tours of Europe. And I'm going to put a band together and I'm going to go out and do all Adrian Gurvitz albums in England and Europe. And she kind of laughs at me and says, yeah, sure. Everybody that'll be there will be in a wheelchair. And yeah, so, I don't know, it's a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think I'm going to be doing that in this next.
Yeah, for sure. And what is, like, you said you produce some up and coming artists. What do you care to plug? I can't talk today. Do you care to plug a couple of them? I forgot a couple words there. So, do you care to plug a couple of them?
Oh yeah, a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, I found a girl in Southampton. And I heard her on a 45-second Instagram. And I was like, oh my God. A white girl from Southampton, kind of like Adele, in the way she speaks. Hello, what's your name, mate? You know, you're all right. Yeah, great. Most phenomenal R&B singer. She's about 24 years old. And in lockdown, I made an album here. So I produced all the tracks. And she sang them in Southampton. So she'd go in the studio in Southampton and send the vocals through into here, into...
Okay.
Her name's Zali. X-A-H-A-L. No. X-A-H-L-I. Zali. Yeah, Zali. Phenomenal record. I've made about 20 records with her. And then in the summer, we hope to, sign her to a major label. I love her. She's incredible. I have another artist that I'm making an album with right now. She's a black singer, incredible voice. Her name is King. That's her name, King. Kind of weird for a woman, but
like K-I-N-G, King.
Yeah, like King, like the King,
Wow.
So that's her name, King. And her music is kind of like Erykah Badu meets Sade.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic record. And I have one crazy artist who's a Turkish alternative singer who's very, very talented, very interesting. Her name is Buel, B-U-E-L. And I'm making a record with her. I already put one record out called Lemon Smile. You can look it up on YouTube. She just got like 500,000 views.
Oh, nice.
And then I have one other artist called Lake, which is like a pop singer, eclectic kind of pop. I'm busy.
You definitely are. That's probably just a few of them, right?
Huh?
That's probably just a few of them, right?
Well, that's who I'm working with right now. I mean, there's people reaching out all the time. We produce this, we produce that, we do this. But, I'm only one person and I just can't, do anymore.
Right.
And I'm pretty comfortable with doing what I'm doing. And I spaced it out. I do a couple of records for this artist, and I do a couple with them and so on and so forth. But Zali is my next major act after Andra Day. Yeah. And I have a production record label called Lonman, Lonman, stroke AGM. So it's Lonman and AGM, mm-hmm. Which is kind of conglomerate of people that are involved with me in helping make all these artists. And it's good fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like these artists kind of have the it factor, don't they?
They do. Here is God, I wish I could just show you Zali.
Okay.
I think this particular film is glitching a bit for some reason. And here she is doing a cover. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, I can see it.
And I know you're never good for me, but you look so good to me. Yeah. I don't need another broken heart or a sleepless night. God, please guide me right. She looks like the girl of my dreams. Yeah. She looks like the girl of mine. She looks like the girl of mine. Well, in the same I came after her, snapped in my head, told him, I don't know how you get down with them clowns, but I was told to. No one could understand. I had way too much aggression that built over the years from my abandoned adolescence. See, I've been lied to, backstabbed and heartbroken. I wanted to cry, but I was too afraid to open. Praying one day I found peace of mind by the ocean. Maybe take the pain away, clean up these rainy days. I've been wrong so many times, I don't know what to believe. Mama say it's my fault when my heart on my sleeve. It's messed up in my heart on ice, cause I can't breathe. I'm up in my heart on ice, it's getting the best of me. Devil in a dress, angel in some blankets. I could have sworn I went to sleep and she was right there. Don't know if it's my dreams or my nightmares. I think it was my nightmares. Yeah, I fly high with my guard. So over broken head, I got too many scars. But I trusted them and they broke my heart. Death's gotta be easy, cause life is hard. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Run it up, run it up, run it up, run it up. And I know you're not no good for me, but you've been so good.
Wow. She has such a sincere voice. Like,
Isn't that crazy?
I love how she carries the notes and stuff, you know?
Crazy.
Yeah. She's a natural.
Total natural. Superstar. Like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I found her, and like she's my next, big thing.
She's got it. I was just like, wow. I don't know what else to say, really. I was just really blown away. So thank you so much for sharing that with me, Adrian. I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're going to probably be playing her really soon.
Oh, absolutely. I am looking forward to that. So, Adrian, is there anything else you would like to add or anything like that in regards to your career or Andra Day or anything like that?
No, we're already married, because I've told you so much about my life.
Yeah, we covered so much ground, so.
You're probably going to go to bed like, can't get me out of your mind. Yeah.
Do you have like Instagram or anything like that, or like Facebook or?
No, she won't allow me to have anything that allows my mouth or say things that I shouldn't. She says I'm just a loose cannon that never knows. You never know what's coming out of my mouth, so she won't do it. But I have an email.
Okay.
And you can send me yours, and I'll send you records as I do them.
Oh wow, I would be so honored, and maybe I could bring like your artists on too. So
yeah, bring me artists. So do you have a radio station, or is this just a magazine?
It's podcast. It's Madness to Creation podcast. It can be found on Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio.
And you edit this, right, and just put the pieces in that you like.
Yeah, yep. I have a few contributors and all that, but I do primarily do the editing and stuff. And I'm also a school teacher by day, so.
Right. Oh, well, I better get going then because,
Oh, you're good. I'll send you my email, and I would love to hear from you and keep in touch. So, I just got to say thank you so much for being a friend, and thank you so much for taking the time for little old me, Madness Creation Podcast. And it was such an honor, and I would love to follow up with you sometime.
Okay, brilliant, man. Well, you take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. I felt truly honored and blessed to have you share that with me. So thank you. Awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. Yeah, you stay safe, okay? Cheers.
See you, mate. Bye.
Bye-bye.